Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Yeager, and this is the MTOM podcast, a production of Iowa PBS and the Market to Market TV show. We're again in video this week as we continue in 2021 to put a little more video for you to watch. It's not so you can see me, but just have it on another platform. So this week, we'll tell you about that topic in a moment, but if you have any feedback for us, hit me up. market2market@iowapbs.org, or you can email me at paul.yeager, Yeager, at iowapbs.org if you have an idea, someone that we should talk to, a topic that we should look at, either for this podcast or for the show in general. This week, we are going to pick up in the COVID-19 world of distilleries. They were hit hard early when a shutdown happened in the COVID-19 as we tried to figure out exactly where spreads were happening, and a lot of public places or businesses that dealt with the public were forced to close temporarily. The Mississippi River Distilling Company in LeClaire, Iowa, it's right there where I-80 crosses over from Illinois into Iowa. Our friend River Burchett, who we have featured before on Market to Market on the TV show back in 2012, we have a conversation about his business setup, remind me as well of how his business all works. Then we'll find out how hand sanitizer was a very big and important part of their business strategy and exactly what happened to keep them in business and the challenges of logistics that came as they navigated their way through the hand sanitizer business. So what does 2021 mean? Does it pick up where 2020 had started to head on the way up, or is there other things on the horizon that Ryan and his brother Garrett are watching? We'll have that discussion this week in the M2M podcast. Ryan, old habits die hard. I mean, you and I go back way too many years, and when you started in the television business, you were a one-man band. Mm-hmm. But when you put a business right on the railroad tracks and the Mississippi River, news kind of just rolls by. What's the deal with you getting credit all the time in media for taking pictures?
There was a big train derailment right behind the distillery, almost right about a year ago. It was right the first week of January last year. And we're right on the river, and the railroad tracks run right behind our place. As a matter of fact, I'm fortunate that I wasn't in the path of the derailed train. They shut down all the roads because there were chemicals on the train, and so no one could get in or out for the media. So I just took my phone and started snapping pictures, and the Register picked it up, and the AP picked it up, and next thing you know, I'm in the Wall Street Journal. So hey, it's a backdoor way of we never shy away from any free publicity. So.
Well, as I mentioned, television's your background. We've done a story with you on Market to Market in the past. Before we started rolling, that was 8, almost now 9 years ago that we did that. Give folks a little bit of your background and then the business.
Yeah, I spent 15 years in broadcasting as a television meteorologist, and worked around Iowa, mainly a couple years in Louisiana, met a couple ladies named Katrina and Rita, and decided it was time to get my way back to Iowa. But my brother and I grew up in family business. My dad and his 3 brothers ran a road construction company for nearly 50 years. It's still going in Western Iowa. And, that was the lifestyle that we were accustomed to. And Iowa was looking at changing the law to try to open up distilling, mainly as a tourist opportunity. We caught wind of that, started writing a business plan, thinking that if nothing else, we'd learn more about whiskey, and that was still cool. But things kept going forward. Next thing you know, banks were offering us money, and we were quitting our day jobs to go make whiskey for a living.
And you're now more than 10 years in it, right?
Yes, over a decade now, and things continue to change and evolve. And we've really centered our experience here. We're in LeClaire, Iowa, right on the banks of the Mississippi River, where I-80 crosses near the Quad Cities. And we wanted to be authentic. We want to be the real deal. So that started off with using local corn in our spirits. And so that evolved into anything that goes into our spirits we try to buy directly from the growers within 25 miles of our distillery. So we get rye, wheat, barley, and corn, all from local producers, which is pretty exciting. And then sometimes being local means you buy a bottle that's made in Texas instead of China. And sometimes it means you buy corn from just 2 miles up the road instead of some supplier somewhere else. So,
was that part of the business plan in the beginning, was to be that local?
Well, the business plan led to that. We were shopping for things and doing pricing on stuff, and we wanted to make bourbon, which is a corn whiskey. It has to be by law 51% corn. Most of it's 70 to 80% corn. And we were looking at a 50-pound bag of milled corn was like $50 at the time. And I'm like, a bushel of corn at its worst at that time, $7, $8, today, we're looking more in the $3, $4 range. And I'm like, we could just get a hammer mill and do this ourselves. And once we decided we could do that locally, we went and talked to a few farmers and they were all in, and once we decided to do that locally, well, then that led to other things, local artists, local barnwood in the bar that you see behind me and things like that. And it really resonates with consumers, and it's given us an identity from the very beginning that's been awesome.
Now, to your left, if you're watching this, is the Mississippi River. You've got a window that faces the south right there. Mm-hmm. And so if you are, there you go. See, look at you. You old habits die hard, Ryan. Look at that. You're panning the camera.
It's too bright out there to really see. I'll try to walk a little closer, see if that helps. There you go. There's the river.
Is there ice on it right now?
No, our portion of the river stays pretty open because it's a narrow channel. And so it has to get pretty cold. And we're actually right at freezing today. So we're doing all right.
And what I was going to say is where you're at the Mississippi, it always took me for a little while in getting used to Davenport and Rock Island and Moline, is that the river through those towns goes east-west, where pretty much everywhere else it goes north-south. So you're right at the bend. One of the great things about LeClaire is its connection to the town across in Illinois. Port Byron, you have Tugfest there in August. Well, you did have that. That's one of those events. Put it on
pause this year, or in 2020. We're hoping it's back for 21.
Well, the COVID part is kind of how I wanted to talk about this. I mean, as I mentioned, we've discussed the business, and you were set up initially on tourism. And when COVID happens in March, what are you and your brother discussing about what can stay open and what can't?
Well, the very honest story is we started this business with about 30 small investors, friends and family primarily, and had grown it and were trying to figure out a path forward. We knew that we're not going to become the next, Bullet Rye or anything. We're primarily a tourism spot, a really great, steady family business. We're not going to become the next national brand, and that's not really our goal. We just want to be a little bit bigger micro distillery, but realize that it probably wasn't in a position to realize a whole lot of value for these investors. And so we tried to come up with an exit strategy for that, and had basically just taken out a monster SBA loan to buy out all of our existing investors and just leave it with my brother and I. I think we closed that loan in February of 19.
Of 20.
Of 20.
Okay.
And in March, the bottom falls out. And the governor tells us, you have to shut your doors. And we sat down at this bar behind me, and I said, well, Garrett, it's been a good run. We made it 10 years. I have no idea how we could possibly service this loan with no income going forward. And I don't know what this is going to look like. So you better start polishing up your resume. And we just have that in our back pocket to see how this settles out. So there was a very real reckoning and a look in the mirror of how in the heck are we going to take this thing forward? It was funny because some distilleries out on the West Coast started manufacturing their beverage alcohol into hand sanitizer and giving it away. The problem with when you're in this industry and you make alcohol, you pay beverage tax on it. If you're going to put it in a bottle, even if it says hand sanitizer on it, you have to account for every drop you make. If it goes down the drain, you can tell them that it was destroyed, but you can't just put it in a bottle and give it away without paying that tax, which is, it's $13.60 a gallon. So it was not, it was a way to dig a hole deeper. And so people were emailing and calling saying, you should do this. It's a great idea. And I'm like, No, that is not going to happen because we're just trying to stay open at this point. And we were doing these little virtual happy hours from the bar, just trying to stay connected to our, consumer base and whatnot. And people were tuning in. I was like, hey guys, we're not doing this. So I appreciate the emails, but it's just not going to work here.
That's how long in? I mean, how long are those emails coming? For a week?
Maybe like a week. Yeah. At that point, the next day after I had said that on our little broadcast, notification comes down from the Alcohol Tax and Trade Bureau that they've negotiated with the FDA and the Department of Homeland Security to allow an exception for beverage alcohol to be processed into hand sanitizer, excise tax free. And the next day, I was back on our virtual happy hour saying, well, we're going to make hand sanitizer. So,
hey, remember that? And never mind.
It was such an extraordinary level of cooperation between such behemoth national agencies. I still look over my shoulder and wonder how in the heck that all came together so quickly, but it did. And so we just started. It's very simple. You mix. They issued one recipe that we could all make, so that it was, had plenty of alcohol content. That even if somebody screwed it up a little bit, it would still be effective. It was not a gel or anything like that would cause problems. It was alcohol, peroxide, a little isopropyl, so it smelled. You wouldn't want to drink it, and some water, and that was it. Some glycerin, so it wouldn't completely dry out your hands. So at that point, we didn't know what COVID was exactly or how it was being transmitted. We're worrying about touching doorknobs, about, now we know a little more about it. But we didn't want to bring in a bunch of people and risk shutting down the whole operation. So our front of house was closed, the bars closed, our retail is closed, all of our tours are closed. And there were 4 of us that sat here working 15, 16-hour days, blending this stuff up in our big tanks. And then we had to buy a little bit of equipment to handle the high alcohol content, which we don't normally, usually we add water to, so it's not so high. This was 80% alcohol. We had to ground all of our tanks so that we wouldn't have any static explosions. And then we just sat around all day long, bottling this stuff up as fast as we could, because people were calling from all over the country. We were sending this stuff to California, to Washington, D.C., Union Pacific in Omaha wanted to send semi trucks to start picking up anything we could make. I mean, it was just absolute mayhem for about 6-8 weeks. And then the national producers kind of caught up and things started to settle down and become a little more manageable, but it saved our business.
For that 6 to 8 weeks though, Ryan, how many were doing what you were doing? How many distilleries do you think nationwide were doing what you're doing? I mean, 1 in every state, 5 in every state?
I think everyone at least dabbled in it. You'd be crazy if you didn't. But I think very few of us went all in like we did. We were making the equivalent of tanker trucks full of it for that period of 6 weeks. I know of at least, there was one other one in Iowa that went all in. And I would say, probably a couple in each state. But it was what happened very quickly was supply chain issues. Okay. You have the alcohol. Now you got to get where you're going to get the isopropyl. At one point, the government, we worked with a big chemical company here in town. The government commandeered every drop of isopropyl they had, said, put it on this truck. It's going to DC. And so you couldn't get it. So, glycerin, where I've never bought plastic jugs and caps before. I don't have a supply chain for that because that's not the packaging we use. So everybody's trying to get that. You got to find that. At one point, we couldn't get the bottles, or they went to pick them up. They weren't ready. And so our trucking company left and we needed them. And so we just rented a Ryder truck, and my brother drove from here in eastern Iowa to northern Indiana to pick them up. Well, at that point, all of Illinois was absolutely locked down, even the rest areas. So he didn't realize when he left that he wasn't going to be able to go to the bathroom or get a sandwich between here and Northern Indiana. So it's so funny to be not even a year removed, and it just seems so foreign and crazy because we've learned to adjust so much. But it was an example of what I think any small business that's still standing here today had to figure out how to tap dance. And if you didn't, you're either not here or you're on your way out. And that's been the story of how we've made it through the last year. We jumped right in and bought as many plastic jugs and caps as we could get our hands on, figuring we'll figure out how to fill them up later, because we knew that was a bottleneck in our supply chain. And so we just went after. We had everything to lose, but nothing to lose, because it was either that or go belly up. So that got us through that period of about 3 months when we were closed in Iowa, and then we got back open, and we went all in on the safety mitigation from day one. Our staff has worn masks even when we didn't have to. We spread the tables apart. We've done everything. We had plenty of hand sanitizer around, so we're really sanitizing things and doing that stuff. That resonated with customers. They felt safe here. Safe enough that the people, I always said there was 3 customers, one that wasn't leaving their house at all, one that didn't care, would lick any doorknob they came by, and then the other one that was like, well, if I could sit on the patio, if I had some room, if I felt like it was a place that was taking this seriously, I'd really like to get out. We've been stuck in the house. And so people started coming out, and it grew. And, we had a great year in retail, even being closed 3 months. I'm stunned. But it's because we made some adjustments. We found out what people were looking for, and things that I never would have dreamt we'd try won't go away when this pandemic is behind us, because it's been so successful. So
when you were closed for those 3 months, I mean, were you allowed to put bottles? I forget, and I've asked this question before, so forgive me. I mean, are you allowed to put a bottle of Cody Road vodka into a box and ship it somewhere in state?
Yeah. So that's one of the interesting things about what we do, is really have multiple businesses. And we have a manufacturing business. We have a business that's through working with distributors to get our products out on liquor store shelves and things like that all around the country. We have a retail business of selling bottles out the front door, and we have a retail business of operating a bar. We fortunately don't have a restaurant yet, but maybe someday. You don't want me in the kitchen. But so that gave us a lot of avenues to get to market, right? So we're still sending products out to liquor stores, which are going bonkers at this point because people can't go to bars or restaurants, so they're drinking at home. I would say every trend in consumer behavior that was moving at the beginning of 2020 moved forward 10 years. So spirits were gaining market share year after year, and now took a seismic leap forward. And not just your bottom barrel, big handles of cheap vodka, but premium spirits have probably made the biggest jump of anything out there during this pandemic. So we benefited from that. The state made some adjustments for restaurants to allow to-go cocktails. So we got on our website, and you could order a cocktail, had a special time to come pick it up. We did curbside delivery. And we're selling cocktails by the bottle. That law has now become permanent in Iowa. So that's another evolution of our business that's new and different. People can come pick up cocktails like they would fill a growler at a brewery. It's a bottle of, it holds about 5 cocktails in it. We sell those. So things like that started to happen. And, we were doing everything we could to accommodate whatever the state would allow us to do. And we're very respectful of the rules. There were some spots where people were, just trying to get around things. And it really is not in our interest to try to get around it, because that's just going to prolong the prohibition, right? So we wanted to figure out ways that we could operate within the rules and have a product to offer forward that people would still be comfortable with, and would keep us going through all this. And meantime, then we get into this tap dance of, we're making hand sanitizer for a few days, then we got to bottle some bourbon, and then we got to do this, so trying to balance all that. But without the front of house being open to the public, that made it a little easier to juggle some of that stuff in the back room.
So you said 4 employees is what you basically were at there on, say, the 20th of March. Mm-hmm. At what point were you able to add some people back were you able to add people back before that 3-month period ended that allowed you to reopen because you four were working those 15 to 18-hour days?
Yeah. So what happened was the logistics became so enormous of getting this hand sanitizer out the door that we immediately, as soon as that got off the ground, if people wanted to work, our bar staff and that, because there were some folks that weren't comfortable coming back. If they wanted to work, we got them right back to work. And even so, we had some people working from home. We have a full-time salesperson in Chicago. We put a forwarder on our phone, and he just sat in his apartment and answered the phone because it was constant all day long. So here he is sitting in Chicago, but he's helping us here by taking our plate. We had somebody at the front door for the walk-up people coming to pick up their stuff. We had somebody at home just setting up all the shipping. It had to be shipped hazmat. So we were working with trucking companies and getting it out where to go. She'd email me the bill of lading. So all we had to do was stack it out the door and be ready for the pickup and things like that. So we were putting people to work even at home, trying to coordinate the different things that were going on here and all the moving parts. So it really worked great in retrospect that, we're just able to be flexible.
After the 3 months, things start to open a little bit. Did business shift in the sense of I'm not making as much hand sanitizer? Has peak hand sanitizer production, consumption, is that in the rear view? Or do you think do you still have a market for a product?
It was March and April, because there's such a national shortage. The large producers were not prepared for that onslaught of demand. And, you go from a situation where people might have some hand sanitizer in their car, their purse, or, whatever, to every desk, every retail counter, everyone wanting to have it available. So the demand skyrocketed. The supply caught up. But we've continued to make it. We've renewed all of our licensing with the FDA to continue making it into 2021, mainly because it's not a huge revenue piece for us right now, but it's become a great community effort. I think it's a feel good for us and for the community to be able to buy that kind of a product locally and to support each other in that regard. And people have kind of gotten used to our stuff. Our stuff is, some of it smells really terrible. It's I don't know if they're using fuel ethanol to make it or what, but it just smells terrible. And we make it out of the same stuff we make our vodka out of. Don't drink it, but it's it doesn't smell bad. And so we've had some people like doctors' offices and things like that are like, we tried some other stuff. It was garbage. We want yours. Please tell us you're making it into the new year. And so the government did extend some of the rules so that we can do this. And so we're continuing it forward. I doubt we'll make it past 21 just because the demand will kind of subside. Yeah. I would hope that we get out of the woods in this regard. And the other thing is we've grown enough with it that it's easy now. The first few weeks it was just the demand was crazy. We didn't know what we were doing. We figured out our process. Now what we do is we just make a bunch of it. We'll make 15, 20 pallets of it, store it away, and then just draw off for that for the next few months. And when we need more, we just mix some more up.
How long does it hold on the shelf? Does it have a shelf life?
Really, as long as the alcohol will evaporate over time. If it's a sealed bottle, should be fine for at least a few years.
Oh, well, then you're totally fine for a while.
Yeah. So the alcohol content for it to be effective is 60%, and the government required us to bottle it at 80%. So you even can lose some of the alcohol and it's still effective. So it's good in that regard.
How different would your story have been if you were, I don't know, a mile across the river in Port Byron in Illinois?
Yeah, totally different. And it's been really interesting. That's probably not the right word. It's been an eye-opener to watch two polar opposite state governments go about this thing. Illinois is probably the most draconian, shutdown state, and Iowa is probably one of the most Wild West, whatever goes states as far as the political approach to this whole thing. And I'm not taking sides per se, but the reality is we all live somewhere in the middle, and trying to navigate it as a business is sure as a heck of a lot easier take the rules in hand and try to put a model forward that allows a consumer, if they see so fit, to come through my door and to spend some money here, than to just have the government say you're done and I'm shutting you down without the proper support in place to handle an industry as large as the hospitality industry. And
I want to go into the hospitality business for a minute, Ryan, before I get us both in political trouble there. But I get what you're saying on things. Forgive me on the state of Iowa laws. I think you had been involved with a state association to try to change some things that allowed you to have more flexibility, to have more events at your business. When did those go into effect?
July 2017.
Okay, so 17. So I was concerned that it was in like 19. And so just as you had gotten used to some changes, it changed. So you did have 2 or 3 years. So I guess where you were in, let's say, July, August, September of 2019, a full 8 months. How long is it going to take before you get back to that point? Will you get to that point? Or do you think there's going to be, as you said, room in the middle?
Well, for the second half of 20, we're already back to where we were for the second half of 19. And the reason for that is, it'll be more interesting to see, does that back off for 21 or does it stay at that level? I think a lot of folks have found us that didn't know we were here before because we were open and some of their other options weren't, especially from across the river. There goes one of the trains through the background. Hopefully he stays on the track. We made some changes here. We used to be kind of like a brewery. You walked in, you just kind of bellied up to the bar, ordered your cocktails and went and sat down, because we never thought it would be profitable to have the staff on hand, to have people waiting tables and stuff like that. We don't have food, so it's just drinks. During this, we didn't want those people coming up to the bar where we're making all the cocktails and stuff. So we asked them to stay at their seats, and we put servers out there. They went to the table side. Well, where somebody might have just one round because they didn't want to go wait in line to get another drink. If somebody comes around and asks them, they're for sure try another one. And then it also is adding this personal level of sales contact, marketing contact with that person. Well, did you know that we have take-home cocktails, or you can take a bottle with you, or, would you like to do a tasting, and things like that evolved, that we absolutely will have servers moving forward after this pandemic, and probably for as long as we're in business, because it worked out to be really good. We were seeing fewer people, but we were getting people to spend more money than they otherwise would. So our year, at least just look at the second half of the year when we're actually open, is up. So we've found some new business techniques by being a little nimble and adapting to the situation that I think will keep that retail side of our business really strong.
I would imagine. Okay, I know you're involved with some small business associations there in the community. Step out the front door there. I always want to call it Main Street. I know that's not really what its name is, but it's the Main Street of LeClaire. How are all the other businesses faring, and how are you exchanging stories about how you can economically, and how you have weathered this storm, and as you try to move forward in 21?
LeClaire is fortunate in that we have a streetscape that now the entire country is trying to mimic in the shopping experience that was actually designed in the late 1800s. So, as people want to move away from malls and these large things and develop these streetscapes where you can kind of walk from shop to shop, that's what we already are. And I think people at least stayed reasonably strong, because most of the shopping experience is spent outdoors. You're not in enclosed places for a real long period of time, unless you decide to have a drink or dinner somewhere. And so for the most part, it seems that LeClaire, we've actually weathered it better than I think some other places, which is interesting. I think the rural population is probably more willing to roll the dice as far as being out and about, if that makes sense. I think that would be echo. I think, as I look at downtown Davenport, and even more so across the river in downtown Moline and Rock Island, where they have even more restrictions, LeClaire certainly performed better than them. So I'm sure, it's been a stress for everybody, but I think that the folks, customers are still finding us here in LeClaire. And I think that, everyone's looking forward to, we're used to January to March, things getting a little tight around here anyway. So I think everyone's looking forward to what this looks like as the weather starts to shift and and the spring pops, what will summer look like? That'll be the real telltale sign.
And hopefully if you can get Tugfest back and get it off of pause and get it back. And we know there's this
Right.
big pent up demand we talk about when we're watching commodities. We always look at the food, the meat industry, the beef and the pork, and like people are just itching to get back out there, and we'll see how, as you said, the 3 different types of consumers, how many of those I'm perfectly good staying at home are going to jump into the I'm good if I can have some space. And that will be probably that gets you from break even to a profit of sorts.
And really for the hospitality industry, you break even on the days when people come out for lunch and dinner a little bit, but where you really make hay are those nights when you pack the place and it's, maybe it's a big event is across the street or those kind of things. And the reduced capacity that these bars and restaurants are working under, some states it's 25%, some states it's in Iowa, it's basically with the space requirements, it's roughly 50%. The sooner that we can get back to mass gatherings and people being able to use the full capacity that they're paying rent for or mortgage for and those kind of things, is the sooner it gets back to normal. I think the really hard thing when you talk about pent up demand is, yes, people will come out, but that doesn't fill the hole that was left behind. People don't order 2 steaks tonight because they didn't have one last month. So I think the hospitality industry more than any, and we're fortunate because we're diversified in that regard. But I can't imagine there's an industry that's going to take a longer time to get back on its feet because of the way that it's designed, the razor thin margins that it already works on, and then the hole that's left behind that has to be filled in from the past year plus or wherever, however long it takes before we can get back to that full capacity level.
Let's go back couple questions to finish here, Ryan. If it was the beginning of 2020 and you were discussing with your investors that you were going to buy them out, would you do that now?
Mm-hmm. Well, it all works out, and thankfully, that was a process that had been going on for a really long time up until everything finally went through from a financing standpoint. So in that regard, I think, yeah, we would have. I think if anybody could have envisioned what was coming down, I would have battened down the hatches, certainly. But I'm really proud of how we were able to respond specifically as a business, and not just me and my brother and the decisions we made, but our team. Being creative, being willing to do some of that tap dancing and stuff. And so I'm not a rear view mirror guy. I am encouraged to look over my shoulder at the past year and see the ground that we've covered. But I think keeping a forward focus and always being ready as a small business to make those adjustments necessary to keep your head afloat is what makes it fun and interesting. And so I'd play the game again.
Hardest question to close. As a former Cy mascot, is it? Are you happier about the football success or more concerned about men's basketball struggles?
I won't even think about basketball for a second. My dad played football for Iowa State. I was raised going to every home game from when we could throw a football in the stands. Nobody was there. Like people who have, even if you've only been a fan for 20 years, you have no idea the cemetery that Cyclone Stadium used to be back on game day. I am so overjoyed to finally see some success, not just for the team and for the town, but for all of these people that I've known for so long that have endured and get to enjoy some football success. It makes me so happy. So yes, it's all about football, and we're all coming back next year, and it sets the stage for the greatest Cyclone disappointment in the history of my life. So I'm just soaking it up all I can.
And that, my friends, is spoken like a true Iowa State fan. That's how you separate those who are Johnny-come-latelys and those that have endured, because they know there's a kick coming somewhere that's not going to feel good.
Yeah, the Twitterverse was like, you guys are the worst fan base ever. I'm like, you have no idea what we've been through. Just shut up and let us be happy.
All right, Ryan Burchett, thank you so much. Good to talk to you and visit. I appreciate the time.
Great to catch up, Paul.
Hit me up, market-to-market at iowapbs.org or paul.yeager at iowapbs.org for any feedback you have. My thanks to Ryan Burchett from the Mississippi River Distilling Company in LeClaire, Iowa. Have yourselves a great day.